Howdy. This video is about building bases in the game Valheim, specifically a couple that my wife and I made. I should say though, this isn't another building or construction tutorial. There's loads of those out there already that are way better than I could do, step-by-steps and time lapses and all that. It's more of a design or architecture tutorial. I just think it's a good idea to do a little designing and planning before you start building if you want to end up with something that looks the way you want it to. And even if you'd rather not draw up blueprints or anything, but you want to just get going, kind of figure out the design while you're building, that's fine. I do that too. But if you don't even have like a vague plan of what you want to make, it's super easy to end up with something that you don't really like, even if you're really good at getting the pieces to all snap together right. It can even be hard to get started. You just look at this flat piece of ground and wonder, what should I do next, you know? Well, one way to avoid that problem is do what we do. We never start with a flat piece of ground. There's nothing wrong with doing it that way. I guess that's probably how the real Vikings did it. But for us, we don't want to live in a fort surrounded by spikes. So we always look for places where the site itself can be our kind of natural defenses. So for the mountain base, I wanted to make it inside the mountain, but the terrain won't let us do that. Instead, my wife found us a great spot up on top of the mountain. On one side, on this side, there's a crazy steep cliff. And over here, there's like this row of giant rocks protecting that side, and a huge rock on the other side. So really there was just one, well, couple of openings where monsters might get in. We just put walls there, and sure enough, it holds everything out, except, of course, the damn drakes, which are a huge problem. In fact, they were a huge problem in making this video. They kept having to stop and kill them. If anybody knows a easy way to permanently protect against drake attacks, let me know, please. It's just more fun, we think, to try to work with the terrain as much as we can and leave it as intact as we can when we're making the base around it. And back when we were looking for a place to put the swamp base, we were still kind of intimidated by the swamp, so we didn't want to try building deep in the swamp, but we found a spot on the edge that was great. Right there is forest, there's swamp, and right between the two was this little outcropping peninsula-looking thing. It seemed perfect. We could use water and steep rocks to guard us in that one. And once we picked what we think is a defensible site, and it's time to start making the building, I always have some idea of what I want to do, but I always start with the bedroom. I usually pick where the bedroom's going to go is one of my very first things that I do. So this little house for the bedroom was actually the entire base for a while, until we expanded with the main bit over there. So we were kind of like living there while I was constructing that. Once we got a little bedroom base to work out of, I start getting the terrain ready for the rest of the base, but I always really try as hard as I can to plan ahead for what I need and only flatten the parts that need to be flattened. Try to keep as much of the original rock natural as I can. But no matter how much planning I do, I always end up needing to do more sculpting, more terrain sculpting. But while I'm doing it, I still try to keep it looking natural, at least, even though I'm doing the carving and not nature. I try to make it look like I didn't do it. Like this area here was chopped up pretty bad and looked kind of ugly, but I've been getting better at making mined rock regrow and look like untouched rock again. If there's any interest, I'll make a video just about how to do that. But I will say one of the easy tricks you can do is, the grass setting on your cultivator, you can make vegetation come back to life. It knows what kind of terrain it's on and adjusts itself based on that. So if it's shallow water, it makes these nice little cattail things. Or you can hand place your lily pads in your pond, if that's what you want. If you do it on snow, it brings the snow back. Don't know why exactly, but I'm glad it does. In the swamp, there weren't any sheer cliffs like the mountains, so it needed a little more sculpting help. For access to the swamp, we tunneled down and made just a little wall with a gate. I wasn't sure if it would work. I made the wall double thick just in case, but it's fine. It turns out they don't actually attack the walls that much. Uh-oh, who said that? Fucking blobs. Anyway, the other side had this cool land bridge that would have been perfect for a drawbridge if we had drawbridges. So we made this kind of a jumping bridge, which I think in general is a decent idea. It does work to keep the monsters out, but problem is I made it at the extreme limit of your ability to jump. So if you're coming back like running from a troll or something and you hit the jump and you don't have full stamina, you won't make it. And I think I should have made it a little closer. Now, I know this game's not really about realism. I mean, it's a Viking video game about fighting monsters and stuff, but even so, like, there's a bunch of little architectural details you can add to your houses that make them feel a little more real. So here's the flat roof up close. Obviously the problem with flat roofs in this game is that you gotta have a roof or your workbenches won't work. And if you care about this, it also can corrode the wood underneath. The wood corroding, I don't think is quite as bad a problem in the mountains, but I'm not 100% sure about that. But obviously, it's not actually that big a deal if you want a flat roof. You have to have the thatch pieces, but they don't have to be visible. You can just put the flat floor pieces that aren't a roof on top. I didn't hide all of them. I'll show you the inside in a second, and I'll show you why. But you know, if I open one of these up, you can see the thatch roofs are all there. They're just you know, hidden under this thing. So the underside of the flat roof, I've given some details and making use of one of the patterns that I'm using over and over. But I didn't like how bright. I wanted to use these cool, I can't remember what you call them, chandelier things. But when they were hanging straight down from the ceiling, it made the place too bright. I wanted to calm it down a little bit. So I just exposed some of the actual roof pieces that I was using, and hung it from those, so it's at a little bit higher thing. It also has this nice effect that it makes the whole area glow, so it's kind of a, I don't know, a softer light. Plus it kind of adds a little bit of interest, I think. You can see it. I used a similar trick in here in the kitchen. This is an example of one of the things you got to live with when you're doing the concealed roof thing is sometimes these little pieces of thatch stick out, which kind of bugs me, but obviously not enough to do anything about it. So in this game, supports do matter, but not that much. But if you pretend like they matter a lot, the building can, I think, sometimes look better because it looks more realistic, you know? Okay, entrances, otherwise known as doors. Doors on buildings, especially exterior doors, usually do more than just be a door to let you know there's a door there. There's usually something extra. It's kind of like the door is puffing itself up so you can tell at a glance where the entrances are or where the exits are. So adding a bit of flourishes and design elements around the door to, you know, sort of beef up its stature as a important egress or ingress. Portals are doors too, if you think about it. So all of our like important portals get nice treatments. Lighting. Indirect lighting's also a good trick. It gives it a nice soft glow. We've got some torches back behind the portal here that makes the area behind the portal glow kind of nicely. It also looks really great when it's on, but even when it's off, it's kind of a background glow that I like. Here's the other portal, showing some of that indirect lighting a little better because the background's not quite as far away and the ceiling's not as high. There's mushrooms up there. The glowing mushrooms you can place on those little item stands, and they sit there and glow nicely. But they don't glow very brightly. I put a bunch up there hoping that it would, really make a cool effect on the roof, but it really kind of didn't. But, as little accent lights, they're pretty good. Rooms and spaces. Make spaces have a clear function. And you don't have to use walls for that. Longhouses are really open, but it's pretty clear that that's a little place to sit and maybe play gin rummy. There's a place to, I don't actually ever sit at that thing, but you get it. As you know, if you've seen The Big Lebowski, a rug can really help tie a room together. Back at the Meadows base, our little starter base, when we unlocked the fermenter, we didn't just throw it down on the ground. We made a little pub. Furniture. You can make your own furniture, kind of. You just build off of what they give you. I also like to use, let's call them built-ins a lot, where there's like a piece of furniture or storage thing, like this little shelf for these chests, or these shelves for those chests. Some of my favorite architects do that a lot in their homes, and it's a little bit controversial in the real world because the people who live there can't rearrange those things. They're like built into the house. If you're a big famous architect with a big ego, you don't care. In fact, you'd rather them not touch it. I can understand if you're somebody who's buying the house why that you might prefer to be able to change it up after a while, but I can also see the architect side in it. You can also think about pathways and sidewalks, and I don't just mean outside the base. I use sidewalks or some kind of indicator to make it clear where the walkways are versus where the little stations or places where you aren't walking are. That's something that public places do all the time. If you look at airports or whatever, there's always carpet or some kind of indicator that this is a place you can walk. But as you're thinking about like sidewalks and pathways and things that are even inside your house, it's good to think about traffic patterns or just the routes people are gonna want to take that are the easiest way to get from point A to point B. And then put the paths there. Ideally, don't even do it at first. Well, not ideally, but one way to do it that I think some college campuses do is to not put any sidewalks down. Wait until you see where the grass is being worn down, because that's the most efficient way people are taking to walk, and then put the sidewalks there. That's hard for me because there's only one other person that uses these buildings, and it's my wife, and she doesn't spend a lot of time at home. She's always out murdering monsters, and she just sort of comes in to sharpen her tools and head back out. And usually I'm like up on the roof hammering or something when she comes by. So I just make the best guesses, and I usually get it wrong. For example, the staircase is in a nice spot to get down to the main work area. But nope, if I was going to do it again, it would start here and go the other way, because sure enough, when my wife is done cooking whatever she needs to cook, he just jumps over the rail. Drives me crazy, stuff like that. But it's my fault. Let's see what else. Materials. If you use different materials instead of just the same thing over and over, that can add a lot of interest too. One of the reasons I was excited to unlock stone was so that we could start mixing stone with the wood. And then when we unlocked, the core wood, the logs, that was, yet another material we could mix in there. And you see that I've done that. There are different areas get different materials, and it can help define the area. You can tell, for example, this area with the logs. Well, those are walls around one big room, and it looks like that even from the outside. So back at the swamp base, I wanted to use a ton of exposed wood. I'm not afraid of using exposed wood. I know it decays, but The thing is, it never decays more than 50%. But I also found out it's not actually true that all the exposed wood decays. For example, wood that you place on rocks, or stone, I mean, for some reason, doesn't decay. At least as of the version of the game that I'm playing now. I don't know if that'll change because it's a little weird. It might. But I never have to repair this sidewalk or this. If you want a lot of exposed wood, another thing to keep in mind is diagonal pieces also don't decay. I don't know why that is, but they also serve as little roofs themselves, so anything underneath them doesn't decay. Edges and trims. Think about the edges of things. In the real world, almost everything every part of a building that stops usually has some kind of trim to it, or some kind of edge. It doesn't you wouldn't often see a real world building have such a important edge as the edge of a deck and have it just stop. It doesn't really happen. So, things as small as just laying down a few horizontal pieces as baseboards or, windowsills or something. That can actually make a sizable difference. It adds up, I think. And besides that, sometimes you can do treatments on the wall that add, that kind of a detail. This panel of wood that goes halfway up, the stone, and that's a thing that really exists. They call it wainscoting. I don't know why. I think originally that it was meant to kind of help the temperature of cold stone houses stay not quite as cold. Another thing I do that is kind of a pain in the ass and probably not recommended for most people who don't have a lot of patience is really being serious about alignment. Making sure that if something looks like it's supposed to line up with something else, it actually really, really does. Most of the early attempts to make this look like that, it just didn't quite work out. I just have to keep at it until it does. But even I've got limits. Look over here. This, little atrium for the portal back to our Meadows base. It's nice, but see that business up there? So it turns out that somehow the right side is like a little bit off from the left side horizontally. And it's not obvious exactly where the problem is. And that's a lot of trouble to debug and a lot of reworking. And so I guess even I am okay with it. However, there. I've learned a lot about getting things to line up right. Well, when I was making that mountain house and, things like this. What is that? If I did this now, it would not look anywhere near that sloppy. And it would be the same on both sides. But when you're checking alignment, and if it feels like it's really frustrating, check to see if some piece isn't just decayed, because that can make you crazy. That is actually the problem with that piece, and that piece not aligning was just that this one and not that one had decayed. The thing about alignment is that if you're a little off, it's really obvious if the thing you're trying to align is part of a sequence or pattern like this. You can tell just looking at it that something's wrong. Humans are really good. We're really good at noticing a problem. If there's a whole bunch of things that are in a row and there's one that's off, it just jumps out at you. Another thing you can try if you're just kind of stumped about where to even start is to make up a theme for the building, design theme. They can be really literally anything. Like you could have a theme that's very historically accurate longhouse, or hunter's log cabin, or Ewok village, whatever. It can make it easier to make decisions as you're designing if you've got at least some vague idea about where you're headed and what kinds of things would help make it look more like a thing like your theme. I just said that. might be wondering what the hell is the theme for this crazy thing. Well, believe it or not, there is one. It's just a weird one. And that's the thing about themes. It doesn't matter what it is, as long as you sort of can think of one and then stick to it as much as you can. The thought I had about this thing was, it came to me when I was watching a really funny series about Vikings called Norsemen. There's one of the characters in that just really doesn't seem like he's human. He seems like he's an alien pretending to be a Viking. I thought that was funny, and made me wonder, what if that was true? Like, what if there was an alien trying to fit in on Earth at the time of the Vikings, but couldn't quite do it? Just everything he made, like his longhouse even, looked a little bit sci-fi as well as Viking-ish. Couldn't quite shed his alien nature. And that was the idea. So I wanted it to make it look kind of like a cross between a futuristic landed starship and a ancient Viking longhouse. But even a stupid theme like that can help you make decisions. Like, I figured a spaceship longhouse wouldn't have a chimney sticking up out of it, so I had to, design. As you know, we have to deal with smoke. I had to design internal chimneys everywhere. I guess that's about it. That's all I've got to say about these two houses, and the design principles and things you can think about if you want to do like I do and way overthink all this and spend way more materials than you have to, and way more time building. But if you're a nut like that, then maybe there was something in here that was useful to you. Anyway, if you want to see something else from me along the lines of this video, just let me know. I'd be happy to do it. Either way, I think I'll probably, now that we've beaten Modor, after we've finished preparing, I'll make another video tour of our plains house. I already have an idea of, seen the plains, so I have an idea what it's like, and I get a pretty good idea about what I want to make there for our plains house, which I guess will be the last one until they let the spiders loose on us in Mistlands. Till then, Skull!